What if your tree could drink water straight from the air? Not from a hose, not from a bucket, but from the cool night air itself. It sounds impossible, but it isn't. 2,000 years ago, farmers grew grapes in rocky desert landscapes using this exact idea. And one grandfather in New Mexico proved it still works today. His apple tree went nearly 60 years without regular watering. And in just a few minutes, I'll show you exactly how it works. And the whole thing begins in the simplest way imaginable. Your hands are down in the dirt. You're planting a young tree. You carve out the hole, ease the roots into place, and gently firm the soil around them. But instead of leaving that ground bare, you carefully arrange a ring of small stones around the base. For the first year or two, you give it some water, just enough to encourage those roots to push down deep. And then you quit. Not the following summer. Not in the middle of a drought. Not even when the heat splits the earth wide open. Time moves on. You get older. Your kids grow up. And that tree doesn't limp along. It flourishes. It stays green when everything else dries out. Its branches hang heavy with fruit. It stands there calm, self-reliant, solid. So what did those stones really accomplish? How can rock, something most of us believe pulls moisture out of the soil, actually protect water, regulate temperature, and, under the right conditions, even collect moisture straight from the air? Today, we're going to dig into the old system behind that 60-year tree. And in just a few minutes, I'll walk you through exactly how to set it up yourself. No backbreaking work, no pricey irrigation systems, and no more living at the mercy of a garden hose. The number isn't reassuring. With regular surface watering, up to 70% of the water never reaches the roots. Out of 10 gallons you carry or pay for, about 7 may do nothing for the plant, lost to evaporation, runoff, or weeds. That's not gardening. That's running in place. There's another hidden cost. Frequent, shallow watering trains roots to stay shallow. We keep giving small drinks at the surface, so roots never reach deeper soil. They stay in the top layer, the first to dry out, and wait for us to return. So when heat waves hit or we skip a day, plants struggle. Not because nature failed them, but because we taught them to depend on us. Over time, the routine feels heavier. The hose seems longer. The heat harsher. We don't want a garden that constantly takes. We want one that gives back. So what if nature already offers a system that lets water in but doesn't let it escape? What if using less water isn't about new gadgets, but about an old design that turns soil into its own recycling system? Once you notice how fast water disappears from bare soil, the real question becomes, how did people grow food without becoming servants to a hose? And here's the part most gardeners never hear: to the Roman Empire. The Romans didn't just move water through aqueducts. They grew crops in dry, rocky lands across the Mediterranean and places like the Negev desert. They valued vineyards, olive groves, and even asparagus, a favorite of Emperor Augustus. But the real mystery is how they farmed in such harsh conditions without modern irrigation. They used stones. Roman agricultural writers described fields where stones weren't removed. Sometimes more were added. Stones weren't debris. They were design. In Israel's Negev desert, archaeologists found thousands of stone mounds once mistaken for graves. Their Arabic name, Tulaylat el-Anab, grape mounds, revealed their purpose. Between 1300 and 1500 AD, the Anasazi and Sinagua peoples in today's Arizona and New Mexico used pebble mulch to grow crops in dry regions. Today, scientists call it lithic mulch agriculture. Different continents, different centuries, same idea. Stones can shield soil like armor, store heat like batteries, and even collect moisture from the air. And this is where it gets surprising. Stone mulch changes how heat and moisture behave at the soil surface, creating a protected microclimate that holds water instead of losing it. It relies on three principles. First, the vapor trap. On bare soil, the sun quickly pulls moisture back into the air, but a layer of 5 to 7 centimeters of gravel shades and cools the surface. As moisture rises, it condenses on the cooler stones and falls back into the soil, like a lid trapping steam. This alone can cut evaporation by more than half. Second, thermal mass. Stones hold heat. During the day, stones slowly absorb heat. At night, they release it just as gradually, keeping soil temperatures stable. That means fewer cold shocks in spring, fewer stressed roots, and fewer surprises for you. Microbes and fungi prefer steady conditions, a blanket that never rots, never blows away, never needs replacing. The third principle is where stones stop just protecting moisture and begin collecting it. At night, stones cool faster than the surrounding air. Just like a cold glass sweats on a warm day, stones cause humidity to condense on their surfaces. Tiny droplets form, slip through the gaps between stones, and drip into the soil. Under the right conditions, stone mulch can gather up to half a liter of water per square meter in a single night, straight from the air. Suddenly, Roman grape mounds don't look like random rock piles. They look like irrigation systems without pipes. They didn't use scientific terms. They simply noticed that soil under stones stayed dark and cool, while exposed soil turned dusty and dry. That contrast changes everything. Theory matters, but proof matters more. In the high desert of New Mexico near the Mesilla Valley, an old backyard grower, let's call him Ray Carter, planted an apple tree. He cleared weeds, added compost, and covered the soil with small stones. For 2 years, he watered lightly to establish it. Then he stopped. He wasn't neglecting the tree. He was training it. He wanted the roots to grow past the evaporation zone, 3 to 4 meters down, where moisture is steady. For the next 58 years, the tree received no extra irrigation. It survived droughts and heat waves, yet every year it leafed out and fruited. And then came the final year. The same year Ray passed away. That tree produced its largest harvest ever, 120 kilograms, over 260 pounds of apples. By modern standards, that tree might seem neglected. In reality, it was resilient. The stones conserved moisture, recycled vapor, moderated temperature, and kept soil biologically active. The roots, trained early, had grown deep enough to stand on their own. The lesson is simple. When we work with how heat and water actually behave, instead of fighting them, plants grow stronger, not weaker. You don't need giant boulders. Smaller stones often work better because they create more air pockets where moisture can condense. Here's how to do it simply and practically. Start by choosing a tree or shrub and removing grass and weeds in a circle 3 to 4 feet from the trunk. Weeds compete for water. Next, spread 2 to 3 inches of compost or well-aged manure over the soil. This feeds soil life from the top down and stays protected under the stones. Then apply fist-sized stones or smaller in a 5 to 7 centimeter, 2 to 3 inch layer. Thick enough to shade the soil but manageable. Leave a 4 to 6 inch gap around the trunk to prevent rot. For most fruit trees, granite or river rock works well because they are chemically neutral. If you're growing acid-loving plants like blueberries, avoid limestone. It slowly raises soil pH. Dark stones warm cooler climates. Light stones reflect heat in hot regions. As with any new tree, water normally during the first year or two. You're simply helping the roots establish. You're encouraging them to grow down past that fragile surface layer. Once the tree is established, the stone mulch begins doing exactly what it was meant to do: protecting moisture, recycling vapor, and quietly collecting small amounts of water from the night air. After that, you're done. No constant weeding. No replacing wood mulch every spring after it rots away. No feeling chained to a watering routine every other day. You've built a quiet little fortress around those roots, and in doing that, you've traded daily labor for long-term resilience. Now, here's where this idea becomes even more practical. That simple circle of stones isn't just for fruit trees. It's a pattern, a principle. And once you recognize it, you'll start seeing where it fits all across your garden. Think about asparagus, a perennial that returns year after year. In the past, some beds were planned to last a generation. And that's when this stops being a gardening trick. It becomes a legacy. There's an old saying that you plant pear trees for your heirs. With stone mulching, you can plant asparagus for them too. You're creating a bed that doesn't fall apart the moment you miss a week of maintenance. You're building something that holds its structure, its moisture, and its promise. Straw and wood chips can work, but they rot, disappear, and often need replacing. In wet years, they can even create soggy conditions asparagus doesn't like. If you watch how asparagus grows in the wild, it tells you what it prefers without saying a word. It often thrives in rocky, well-drained places, sandy soil, rough ground, areas where water doesn't linger. So, when you spread gravel or small stones over a perennial bed, you're not being fancy. You're copying nature. You're improving drainage. You're shading the soil. You're reducing evaporation. And you're offering that asparagus bed one of the greatest gifts you can give it. You're holding weeds back. Weeds are the #1 enemy of an established asparagus patch. They steal water. They steal nutrients. They steal sunlight. And they don't take breaks. A gravel mulch makes that kind of theft much harder. And here's the bonus every gardener appreciates. Stones warm up and store heat. That means the soil wakes up earlier in spring. And earlier soil warmth often means earlier spears. Those tender green and purple shoots that feel like the first real yes after a long winter. Same principle, same quiet engineering. Stone doesn't rot away. It doesn't vanish by next season. It doesn't demand that you redo the work year after year. It stays, and it serves. As we move through our later years, we start thinking about time a little differently. We think about what we've built, what we've learned the hard way, and what we want to leave behind. Not just for our children and grandchildren, but for the quieter parts of our own lives too. Our mornings, our energy, our peace. That's why this simple circle of stones matters. Because it's more than an agricultural technique, it's a philosophy. It reminds us we don't have to fight the garden to earn its gifts. Sometimes the smartest thing we can do is set the right conditions and step back. The ancient world understood that stone could protect moisture and stabilize soil. Desert farmers understood that rocks could gather water from the night air. And in our own time, one ordinary apple tree proved that same truth in a practical, down-to-earth way. When roots are encouraged to grow deep and the soil surface is protected, a plant becomes independent. And this is where it becomes personal. You lay down compost. You form that quiet circle of stones. And you know that long after you've stopped dragging hoses, maybe even long after you're gone, that tree will still be there, still pulling moisture from the night air, still guarding dark, living soil underneath, still giving fruit, season after season, as if it remembers the hands that set it up. That's a legacy you can actually touch. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever used rocks or gravel in your garden? Have you noticed how the soil underneath stays cooler and holds moisture longer? Share your experience, because your story might be exactly the encouragement someone else needs. And if you enjoyed exploring this forgotten bit of wisdom with me, give this video a like and pass it along to a fellow gardener who's tired of heavy lifting. Don't forget to subscribe to Still Growing Seniors, where we believe we never stop growing, no matter our age.